In this video, I will highlight the main topics which will be on midterm exam. But I will start this lecture by an item from the newswire. Russian warships disrupt shipping in Lithuanian exclusive economic zone. Russian warships have disrupted commercial shipping in the Lithuanian exclusive economic zone (EEZ) by ordering ships to alter their courses because of naval exercises, the Lithuanian Ministry of Defense said. On October 10th, the Lithuanian Navy Control Center recorded warships of the Russian Federation indicate 6 civilian ships in the Lithuanian EEZ to alter their route because of the naval exercises in the Russian EEZ. A Lithuanian Navy ship, Dzūkas, was dispatched in response to the situation to patrol Lithuania's territorial waters, an exclusive economic zone, and to record potential violations of civilian shipping that warships of the Russian Federation could commit. This indicates how relevant what we're studying in our class to the international situation which surrounds us. As we spoke about the potential conflicts which have been result of the establishment of the EEZs, this is just another example how this disruption of the EEZs can lead to international conflict. But let me resume the main topic, which is of this video, which is I would like just to go through with you the main questions which can be on the midterm exam. So we'll start I would like just to give you highlight things which could be on a midterm exam. One of them will be the history of international law. So we'll look at the personalities, concepts, and schools. I think we should really focus on one major personality in this introduction. So we'll focus on Hugo Grotius, who was born in 1583 and died in 1644. He lived in Holland, which was at the time the most powerful state as a seafaring state in the world. And it provided Grotius the kind of geopolitical location. So his treaty, which was considered to be the first treaty of modern international law, called Jure Belli ad Spaces, to become the main pioneering work, and as a result he was still known as Hugo Grotius, known as the father of international law. He also established in his legal writings 3 main doctrines of international law, specifically: laws of war apply to all parties, mare liberum, applying to the freedom of the seas, and extraterritoriality of ambassadors. Those 3 principles are still with us, and they are considered to be the foundation of international law. We should know next important item which we should focus on is the Peace of Westphalia. Peace of Westphalia was signed in 1648, actually 3 years after the passing of Hugo Grotius. Peace of Westphalia is essentially a European settlement which brought to an end the 80 years war between Spain and the Dutch. It was a religious war between Catholic Spain and Protestant Holland. And also it coincided with the end of the German phase of 30 years war. The peace was negotiated from 1644 in the Westphalian towns of Münster and Osnabrück. And as a result, this treaty is known as this peace is known as Peace of Westphalia. Why it's important, this Peace of Westphalia is so important, is because this treaty of peace established main principles of international law, which is, and the most important being the principle of sovereignty. So at the time, until 19th century, sovereignty was established in the person of the ruler, of the king, of the queen of the realm. It was the only sovereign recognized by international law until the 19th century French Revolution. So let me highlight what was meant by Westphalian sovereignty. Firstly, it acknowledged the rise of the monarchical nation states, such as England, Spain, France, Portugal, Poland, and Germanic fiefdoms. So the following are the principles of Westphalia. Firstly, it ended the 30-year-old war between 1618 and 1648. Second, peace treaty between the Holy Roman Emperor and the King of Sweden, as well as the King of France and their respective allies. It is the Peace of Westphalia established the idea of sovereignty, that monarch had rights to protect their territory, nations were treated as people and so afforded rights under the law, and set guiding principles on how nations talk to each other via diplomatic channels. As we know, until today, there is a significant number of so-called unrecognized states. The most recent examples would be the such states as Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which are not recognized, but there is a large number of unrecognized states which we have discussed during our class. So this is very important to, and as most dire example of unrecognized state, an entity which claims to be a state, it's called, as we know, the Islamic State, or sometimes called ISIL, Islamic State in Levant, which is a gross challenge to the notion of the Westphalian sovereignty and sovereign state. Next, I would like to highlight the importance of the positivism in reference to international law. Positivism emerged in 19th century. Its philosophical founder is Auguste Comte, Lecomte. He is known as father of positive philosophy. What's the main principle which relates to international law? As a result of positivist philosophy, there emerged a distinction between civilized states and uncivilized states. As a result, states which were later to become known as colonies, they were recognized as non-uncivilized states, and as such, they did not have personality in international law. This brought about principle in international law which was valid until decolonization in 1960s. This principle was known as terra nullius, which means an empty land. So the lands which were populated by quote-unquote uncivilized peoples were known to be empty, and civilized nations had the right to control them and to conquer them and to create colonies in order to quote-unquote civilize them. And most territories in Asia and Africa, and up to a point in South America and Australia, were known as terra nullius, and Western states they came to to be known as civilized states under the principle of positivist philosophy, and they were able to have a legal right to colonize quote-unquote uncivilized states. This principle obviously was challenged as a result of decolonization, and today we have in the post-Soviet states, they do not, I mean, they were also artificial colonies of the Soviet Union, so to say. Okay, another important principle in international law is that boundaries are established by treaty, and there, as we know, even today there are many boundary disputes. But what international law has to say about this? There are several types of boundary disputes. Position disputes, it's when disagreement is to interpretation of boundary treaty. Okay, we remember we looked at the example of Chad and Libya. Territorial disputes over ownership of territory. Irredentism, land that was formerly part of another state with which there are ethnic ties. Resource disputes, if you remember the war, first Gulf War of occupation of Iraq, of occupation of Kuwait by Iraq. And functional disputes, disagreements over policies to apply to border. For example, Mexico-US border, the main obviously dispute, it's about illegal aliens crossing into the United States. It's a functional dispute. It's not about the position of the border, but about what its main function is. Obviously, we should pay attention to several most important schools of international law or international relations in broader sense. So we're talking about realist school, we're talking about liberal school, we're talking about institutional school, and we're talking about constructivist. All those definitions you should be familiar with by now. I would like you to draw your attention to the fact that you should study the material which I posted in Schoology titled Midterm Exam Review. It has a very full coverage of the notion of the concepts all related to the Vienna Convention on the Treaties. It highlights and explains and provides definitions of the types of instruments, and you should be familiar with it by now. Next, there will be maybe 1 or 2 questions related to UNCLOS. We spent quite a great deal of time on UNCLOS, and I'm sure you should have good familiarity with this topic. As you recall, the UNCLOS was United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea. It was introduced in 1982, and it came into force in 1994. It covers all issues related to the sea, and the definition of the sea also can be problematic, as we remember if we talked about the Caspian Sea, which is recognized by 2 dominant states, Iran and Russia, as a lake. And by being a lake, UNCLOS doesn't cover this water body, but by consensus of most international organizations, Caspian is a sea, and other riparian states of the Caspian Sea, such as Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan, they consider it as a sea, and with all the consequences for the application of the UNCLOS, of the law of the sea. As such, Caspian Sea is divided. It has the conflict between those two due to its because it's unrecognized status. And obviously, I would like you to pay attention to the concept of the landlocked states. The landlocked states suffer from their lack of access to the sea, and I would like you to recall and look at the PowerPoint which I created regarding the landlocked states, and those concepts also might be on exam. At this point, I would like to thank you for your time, and if you have still questions, please address them via Schoolology. And I'm wishing you great success in the midterm exam, and I'm sure you have good preparation done. Thank you so much.